Hello, and welcome to Batflips and Nerds, the baseball podcast with a British twist. Playoffs? Talking about playoffs? We're talking about playoffs. And joining me for the pleasure of talking playoffs is Darius Austin. It's a two-man pod today, Darius. Are you excited for the playoffs?
I'm very excited. I've been consuming playoffs. I'm delighted that you've brought that out after having to wait all season to unleash it. Obviously, that was the highlight of your year, just getting to use that phrase. So yeah, it's been
rare.
good so far. It's rare. Not every day you get to bring that one out. And yeah, looking forward to what feels like a pretty open playoff field this year.
It does, yeah. It's fun that I always feel like these first few games in the wildcard round, division round, are best for us, right? Because you get so much more viewable baseball at a polite hour that we can watch, which is fun. And yeah, what I always forget, well, not always, but it's easy to forget how much fun the wildcard round is, where like every game has so much jeopardy involved in it. You know, I understand that the best form of baseball is across 7 or preferably 162 games, but there is something about a 3-game series where like you lose and you're immediately on the brink of elimination that makes it quite fun, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of every moment laden with tension. We've had really, really close games. Both the games I watched yesterday, the Tigers Guards and the Cubs Padres, were really tight games through to the end. So high tension. Ninth inning. I didn't watch the Red Sox Yankees live, but Chapman really had to dig himself out of a hole in that as well. So yeah, really, really high leverage stuff all the way through, and some really excellent starting pitch performances. I'm sure we'll get onto some of that in a bit, but good to see sort of after the trends in baseball lately towards let's go to the bullpen early. It's been great to see some big game starts from some of the aces in the game.
The return of the workhorse, yeah, we can get into that, but that was fun to see. A good day to kick off the playoffs. We're going to get into some of the teams that are involved, some of the teams we are excited to see, some teams we're rooting for, maybe some we're rooting against. I don't think we're going to do our usual playoff preview, partly because we're already 2 days in. As I speak now, the Guardians and Tigers are playing game 2, so in a matter of hours, the Guardians may well be eliminated from baseball from the playoffs altogether. So we won't do that, but we will talk a little bit about some of the key protagonists who we're excited to see take part in the playoffs this year. But obviously we have to start with the big news of the week, which is the Rockies getting rid of Bill Schmidt, their general manager. I'm only joking, we're not going to talk about that. But a good move from the Rockies to finally move on from their pungent general manager who's not been doing a great job there, Bill Schmidt. Anyway, let's talk playoffs. Let's start off, I guess, with the teams that didn't make it in. A couple notable ones I think we're going to cover to kick off. Maybe we'll start with the Astros and then we can dive into the poor old New York Mets. But I personally didn't see the Astros missing the playoffs this year. I think in our preseason preview, both the A team and B team had the Astros, cruising back into the playoffs, if not back to another division title. And it felt like for most of the year, they very much had that under control. But it just started to drift away from them in August, and that sort of expected bounce back in September never materialised, and they ended up on the outside looking in. Were you surprised, Darius? Was this team simply not good enough, or is this a massive missed opportunity for a team that we've become so accustomed to seeing in October?
I obviously was on record saying that the Astros were not going to win the division this year, so I wasn't hugely surprised that the Mariners did it. I mean, I was surprised that the Mariners sort of actually did something at the trade deadline and did push some chips in. And to be fair to them, they played very good baseball down the stretch. I think that was a big factor. This wasn't like some of the other collapses that we'll talk about in a minute. I think this was heavily on. Yeah, Seattle played really good baseball in September, and they won the matchups they had to win. And also, I think you just have to look at the injuries the Astros had. Jordan being down for quite a big chunk of the year, Jeremy Pena, a couple of IL stints that really hurt them. The injuries in the rotation they had as well. It was, Valdez and Brown, and then who is starting this game now? Jason Alexander. I mean, what is happening here? So it was not the Astros we've seen in the past. This team is aging a bit. Altuve had the weird outfield experiment and bounced around. He had a decent season, but with them trading away Tucker as well, this was not the strength that we've seen in the past. So a bit surprising to see them completely drop it altogether. But I think when you look at their underlying numbers, when you look at what that roster looked like at the end of the season, I don't think we should necessarily be saying this is a massive shock that this team isn't in the playoffs. I think they were pretty fringy to begin with. Yeah, I think probably we got better teams in the aggregate once you look at the big picture.
Yeah, it feels like it just never really felt like the Houston Astros evolved this season. I think injuries had a big part to play in it, and I think they probably will bounce back next year, assuming better health. But the Christian Walker signing didn't really pan out, did it? I don't think he had a very good first season in Houston. We sort of talked a lot about the depth of that rotation at the start of the year, but it actually bottomed out pretty quickly. And yeah, some of the guys who you'd expect to be dominant, like Framber, were struggling towards the end of the year. So yeah, maybe not a huge shock that they weren't able to get in there. Although I do think 87 wins in a 3 wildcard league feels like it would usually be enough to at least grab you one of those spots. I mean, in the National League, the Reds made it in with 83. So maybe there was also an element of bad luck that it was just a pretty strong AL wildcard field in the end. They obviously ended up with the same number of wins as the Tigers, but missed out on the tiebreaker. But yeah, a shock not to see them in the playoffs, because I don't know how many years in a row it would have been, but it feels like 7 or 8 at this point that they've been playing postseason baseball. So that's, somewhat surprising.
Yeah, I think after they came out of that rebuild, I think they made the playoffs every year since until now. I can't remember exactly how many years that was, but yeah, it must have been about 8, I think.
It was 4 straight ALCS appearances at one point too. Like, they could just pencil them in for a while to be in there in the ALCS playing someone. So yeah, changing of the guard in the AL West, and I think we're going to talk about the Mariners a little bit later on. Well, we definitely are, but an amazing season for them that we'll get onto, and a well-deserved division title. Now then, the other big collapse, and this one really was a collapse, the New York Mets. Where did it all go wrong for them? I mean, a litany of issues that besieged this team, but at one point, fairly far into the season, in May, I think, the Mets had the best record in baseball, right? And they were looking like being World Series contenders. You always had question marks about that rotation when Clay Holmes was the ace, but it felt like the lineup was really strong. They had enough pitching depth. The bullpen was solid. This was going to be a team that would compete with the Phillies for that division title. Instead, they just slowly but surely crumbled. Getting pipped to the post on the last day of the season. Losing to the Marlins of all teams must have been pretty hard to swallow. I mean, I say the Marlins of all teams. The Marlins ended up 4 games back of the Mets, which is remarkable in itself. But yeah, this is an utter catastrophe for the Mets, isn't it? What happened?
Yeah, it's funny that it's the Marlins. I think I heard on Effectively Wild that the Mets have lost a playoff spot on the last day of the season 4 times in the last 28 years, and 3 of those 4 times it's been because of the Marlins. There's something about this. The Marlins are just like, we are up for this now. We're eliminating the Mets from the playoffs. That is our jam. So I guess you might have thought, oh, this is all right for the Mets. All they got to do is beat the Marlins, but maybe not the best opponent for them to have. I think we talked about the pitching and how that fell apart. I mean, it's not ideal when the guy who was supposed to be your ace ends up getting demoted to AAA because he's pitching so badly. Nolan McLean, all credit to him, came up and formed fantastically, and I'm sure the Mets would have been looking at him as maybe their ace if they had made it into the playoffs. But when you have to say, let's give the ball to 3 completely unproven rookies down the last couple of months of the season, I think that really speaks to what went wrong on the pitching side. They also did really try at the deadline, I think, to strengthen that bullpen, and it just went horribly, horribly wrong. Ryan Helsley had the worst stretch of his career probably as soon as he puts on a Mets uniform. So you can't say that they didn't try to strengthen that side of things. It just didn't work out very well for them. They were also spectacularly unclutch. I think the lineup was good from if you look at everybody's individual stats, but they didn't really score the number of runs you would expect from that collection of talent. So I don't think you can blame Juan Soto. Had an unbelievable season, especially in the second half. You can't blame Francisco Lindor, a 30-30 year, I believe, doing Lindor things. Pete Alonso bringing the homers. They were all there. They were all hitting. It just didn't quite come together on the pitching side. They're getting a bit old, not the best defensively, and I think you just have to say that even through all that, it was right there for them. It's not like they had to win a lot of games. 84 wins was all it took. The bar was pretty low, and they couldn't manage it. So fair play to the Reds for hanging around in there. But I think if you were the Mets and somebody had said to you at the start of the year, you need 84 wins to get into the playoffs, they would have been like, yeah, 100%, no problem, we're doing that.
Yeah, well, most people were penciling him in for 94, right? And a fight for the title. I mean, it just constantly felt like the Reds are going to fade away, the Mets will pull away. And always the closer to the end of the season it got, the more confident you were like, look, it's just going to take a few wins here or there. They'll pull away. It's gonna happen. And maybe the Mets themselves fell into that trap of like just assuming that wildcard spot was there for them, and it wasn't. And yeah, those couple of losses towards the end of the season obviously proved massively important. But I mean, any win across the course of the season would have got them in. So that's the painful part of it. Did they leave it too late to call up those young pitchers? That's what I wondered. Obviously, that they had so many issues with the rotation, but it did seem they were hesitant to call up some of those top guys who actually looked really good. McLean, Tong, even Sproat, I think looked decent in his short time in the major leagues. Should they have brought those guys up earlier and had more faith? Or, was it very much it's an emergency, let's just see what they've got, and actually they were more ready than the Mets anticipated?
Yeah, I think they might have been a bit of a victim of that start, as you said. I think they might have just been set out so far ahead, and there was perhaps a little bit of a temptation to say, we don't want to start the clock on these guys. Maybe we think they're leading a little more time. Maybe we just, want to wait. And we'll use them next season and get an extra year of control. I guess there probably was that temptation with where they were in the standings. I'm sure if you'd said to David Stearns in June, do you need these guys? He would have said no. So at the point they did need them, I think, they made that move, and they made that move on all three of them as well, which is probably a lot more aggressive than a lot of teams would be. But you could easily argue that certainly if they'd had another 2 or 3 starts from McLean, then they would have got that win they needed. The margins are easy to see when it's the end of the season and the full picture is known.
It is, yeah. Well, unfortunately for the Mets and Astros, that's the last we're going to talk about them this season. Unfortunately, that's curtains. But let's talk about some of the teams that did make it in then. And as mentioned, we're not necessarily going to go series by series here, but we'll try and touch on a few of these teams. Let's start, I guess, with a team that you're not necessarily rooting for. We can get to that later, but so a team that you're excited to watch or have got question marks about or keeping a close eye on, whether that be in this wildcard round or lurking in that divisional round waiting for them.
I'm very interested in the Cubs. I think the lineup has been excellent at points in the season. And then, we've seen the PCA collapse. Seiya Suzuki had a real swoon before sort of coming around late in the year and then hit a home run in the first game against the Padres. So maybe he's coming around. I think this lineup could be really, really dangerous if they can sort of all get clicking again at the right time. And then it's just a case of, can they string enough pitching together to keep the runs off the board? Because it would not shock me at all if the Cubs lineup made a run in this playoffs and they ended up being the most fearsome unit. I think they're right up there with the Yankees and the Dodgers as the most dangerous. So, there's definitely some concerns there. We've seen the vulnerabilities that Armstrong in particular has. And maybe other teams will find that easy to exploit. But they're a very good team defensively. Love a lot of the bats in that lineup. And it's just a case of, can they do maybe like what the Rangers did a couple of years ago when you look at the staff, you look at the bullpen especially and say, well, this is not going to cut it. And sometimes in the playoffs, it just happens, everybody gets hot at the right time and you end up putting it together. And I think another comp with that Rangers team was that they did have a really fantastic lineup that season. So I'm interested in the Cubs. They've got a lead on the Padres already by the time people hear this, but they may well already be in the next round. So I think they're definitely ones to watch for me.
Yeah, that first game felt big for them to get that win. It was their first playoff win, I think, since 2017, which is crazy to say because it feels like they've never tanked in that period or been terrible, but they just, constantly have been hovering with the playoffs, and when they have gotten in have been unlucky or bad in the wildcard round. And so good to see them get that win on the board. I think that was big, and hopefully they can convert it against, a Padres team that is also very fun. I wouldn't hate seeing them progress through the playoffs, but there's something about, I think, playoff baseball at Wrigley Field that it just feels quite right. So I'll be interested to see, how far the Cubs can go. I mean, they never really had a chance of catching the Brewers in the end, but that if those two teams meet, that feels like it would be a good series to keep an eye on as well. I'm interested to see another team in the Wild Card Series who've got a 1-0 lead and maybe can close it out today, the Detroit Tigers. I think we probably should have talked about them in our section on teams that missed the playoffs. The Tigers obviously did make it in, but my God, did they make it hard for themselves, didn't they? They blew a 15.5 game division lead, which feels almost impossible. And it just felt like all the momentum was fading from them. Honestly, I think to just get into the playoffs must have felt like such a relief, because it would have gone down as one of the all-time great collapses if they missed out on the postseason altogether. But they sneak in, and of course the way that it ends up working out, they play the Guardians in the first round, the team that snuck up and pipped them to first place in the end, as the Guardians just always do. Negative run differential, AL Central title. That's just the Cleveland Guardians way, isn't it? And that series, I mean, it's going to be a low-scoring series from the look of things, and these are two teams that have both struggled to score runs at different times this year. But if the Tigers, I feel like, can get through this, they maybe have the ingredients of a team that can go on a bit of a run. We saw that last year in October, right, where they suddenly started clicking with Scooble on the mound last night. What was it, 14 punch-outs over 7 and something innings. He is good enough to win any game for them, and that counts for a lot in the playoffs. And I think that bullpen looks good. The lineup has scuffled for a long time, but there's enough guys in there that you can maybe squint and see production. But yeah, some of the guys who started the year so hot have tailed off. But again, another team that just feels like now that they've got in, it's a huge sigh of relief. Can they convert that into a reasonable October run and take some momentum into the next round? We'll see. I think you were going to talk about the Guardians and their pitiful run scoring, weren't you? But yeah, they need to get their act together quite quickly.
Yeah, I mean, how is it the Guardians again? Like, this team just will not go away. It doesn't seem to matter what their roster looks like. And not that long ago, you sort of thought, oh, finally, the Guardians are just going to have like a 77 win season, and they're not going to be anywhere near the playoffs. This is the year. We don't have to deal with this. And then they pull off the most improbable comeback in MLB history. And without seemingly actually getting any better at scoring runs, just by conjuring up this impossible pitching stretch. I think they were one short of the all-time record for most consecutive starts with 2 or fewer runs allowed, of 19 they put together in September. I think it was like the 1915 White Sox were the last team to beat that. They got 20, so they missed that. Well, exactly, yeah. Dead ball times we have to roll back to limit runs like this Guardians team did in September. So, yeah, I mean, fair play to them. They've done it again with the old pitching factory over there, it seems. You still don't feel like they've quite got, some of those rotations of old, but Gavin Williams has really come around. Tanner Bybee's pitched really well lately. I believe he's pitching really well again right now. And then I almost thought last night that they were going to Guardians their way past Scooble, who looked absolutely dominant. They could barely get a ball out of an infield. I think Kyle Manzardo was the only player to hit the ball out of the infield. And the run they did score was just ludicrous. I think it was like a 48 mile per hour slow chopper that the second baseman couldn't make a play on in time, and then a little bloop hit that sort of just looped over Scooble's head to get the run to come in. And I was just like, how are they doing this? Like, this is the most Guardians thing I've ever seen. Fortunately, the Tigers did eventually manage to close it out despite a little scare in the 9th. But they are, I don't think this is hyperbole. I believe they are the worst offense in the playoffs in baseball history by OBP. They've got a 296 OBP. And I just don't want to continue to see this. It's not particularly entertaining to me. They don't score runs. I'll give them credit. They did hit a home run today. Well done, George Valera. But they called Chase DeLauter up for it. Like, he's making his MLB debut in center field today because they're like that desperate to get some offense into the team. That they've got this guy who's never actually played a major league game in his life. I think he's only played about 30 games in center field in the minors, and they're just like, please, will somebody give us some offense? No offense to Jose Ramirez, who is obviously a very good player, but the rest of this lineup is absolutely god awful. I mean, I think you only have to go about 4 hitters deep to get to sub 700 OPS. It's dreadful. So all credit to them for the unbelievable comeback, but I do not want to be sitting through playoff games later in this postseason just watching the Guardians like small ball their way to 1-0 victories without ever hitting a ball out of the infield. It's not entertaining to me.
Do you know what? I'll play devil's advocate, not because I think the Guardians, offense is good or entertaining. God no, I'm not insane. But I just feel like this team has a way of playing really entertaining playoff games. Like last year, we saw it in their series with the Yankees, that like every game was crazy back and forth, and you had the big Christmas home run. And I feel like they've got the energy of a team that could do that again this year. As we speak, they've just got out of a first and third, no one out jam in the seventh to keep their playoff hopes alive. And I just feel like those teams that don't score many runs but have good pitching create entertaining or at least close playoff games, right? Because you end up getting to the seventh, eighth, ninth, and it's like every run is so important. Don't get me wrong, I love a good slugfest as much as anyone, but I do feel like there's something about an October game that's 2-1, 1-0, 3-2 going into the late innings that excites me, and maybe that makes me sad. In fact, it definitely does. But I feel like, the Guardians are that team. So I'm not going to sit here and say, like, God, I hope they make it all the way to the World Series, because I don't. But I will say that almost painful brand of small ball, low scoring baseball can sometimes actually be quite a fun watch when October comes around. And look, I mean, maybe it is the guy they've called up today who turns into the spark plug they need, but all it takes is for someone to have a decent month and give Ramirez and Kwan a little bit of support, and I guess you can squint and see some run production, or at least enough to carry that rotation through. That is October for you. But yeah, it also feels like they could go out today with a whimper and with the same old issues as every year where they can't score any runs.
Yeah, they feel a bit like the Brewers have for like quite a lot of years, where they'd be good in the regular season and they'd get to the playoffs and they'd just get shut out because there wasn't actually, it's Christian Yelich and then a bunch of people who can't hit. Jose Ramirez being the Christian Yelich on this team. I don't suppose you're wrong in the sense that the sort of percentage of high leverage moments in these Guardian games is probably pretty high, because they almost never blow anybody out. So if you're sort of looking for a game with high volume, I want to spend as much time as possible not knowing who's going to win this game, then I guess they're pretty good for that. I think it's the sort of the sheer fluky feeling of all of it. Like that run they scored against Scooble yesterday, it didn't feel like they did anything right, and they still got a run across. It sort of felt perverse against the rules of the universe. And maybe that's how all low scoring games are, really. You just need a bit of luck to get it over, but it seems disproportionately weighted towards Cleveland somehow.
It can be infuriating as well, especially if you have a rooting interest in the team going against Cleveland.
Yeah, like, I'm sure the Tigers fans are. Yeah,
a run on a wild pitch, or just this stuff that's like, how they're not good. How are they managing to do this? So I can see how that could be frustrating to watch, and to know in your heart that you're a better team than them, but you just can't prove it. Let's maybe talk World Series favourites then. I was saying, to my mind, this feels like one of the most open postseasons where there's no real obvious World Series favourite. And look, maybe we say it every year, right? When it comes around to playoff baseball, you can't really have a favourite. It's never a predetermined outcome, because of the fact that in a 5-game series, 3-game series, 7-game series, anything can happen and any team can get hot. But it feels like, whereas in the past it's been like, oh, the Dodgers are the favourite, or the Yankees, or whoever, this year it is very open. And maybe I'll kick off just talking about the Milwaukee Brewers, team you just mentioned, because they ended baseball with the best record, which somewhat shocking, especially because I still have that opinion of them that you just spoke about, where they figure out a way to get some good pitching out there, but they just never ever are able to get it done with their lineup in the playoffs. So I just have that same thought in the back of my mind. But is this year's Brewers team different? Should we be thinking of them as a World Series favourite? Does the record reflect how good they are, or is it again a bit of a mirage? They had obviously that crazy hot run in the middle of the season that pushed them up to this great record. Or is there a reason to think that some of these guys that they haven't had previously, whether that be a Rhys Hoskins or a Jackson Chourio or other guys who've had breakout years, are going to carry on through October? What's your view on the Brewers?
I think it's a better lineup. It's a deep lineup now. There's not a lot of weakness here. If you look at the performance, there's a lot of guys who have had above average seasons. I still think they're very light on guys who are like, this is the game changer. There isn't an Aaron Judge, there isn't a Jose Ramirez, there isn't a Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think almost every other team and in the playoffs has got probably multiple guys in their lineups and you're kind of like, yeah, it's Yelich, and then not sure really. But maybe I'm not giving enough credit to some of the guys who've come out of nowhere this year. We've had guys like Isaac Collins, for example, getting on base at pretty high clips. We've had the Andrew Vaughn renaissance coming out of nowhere. They are very good defensively. I think William Contreras has had a bit of a down year, but we've seen him be a very high-end defensive player. So I think they've got more than they've had in the past. This is definitely not Guardians level, terrible lineup. They're definitely an above average lineup. I still not sure that it's going to be the best for them in the playoffs when there's a bit more time to game plan, when it is a bit more of now we've got an opportunity to put our best guys out there, really focus in. We've got extra off days. Is that going to play into their hands? I don't think so, because of that lack of high-end talent. So I'm going to say I'm still not a big Brewers believer, but I think maybe there'll be less of those sort of very frustrating, we've got into the playoffs and we've immediately been bounced without scoring any runs type series for them. I don't think that's going to happen to them this year, but I still do think they lack the top end of the roster to be a true World Series. So.
Who do you think is a favourite then, if you had to call it right now? Who's the team to beat?
It's difficult. I want to say the Mariners, because they've actually made it finally. They've got the rotation, which is great, and they have a megastar. They have Julio, who's an absolute elite centre fielder and has done his usual. Doesn't really hit in the first half. Oh wait, actually he's elite in the second half move, which if you could just fix that for the whole season would be incredible. I think he was still worth nearly 7 WAR despite another slow start this year. So I'd love to see them do it. I still, it's not a great lineup. There's concerns in there. They've got some pretty weak spots. Maybe Cal Raleigh can keep doing this for another month. Fingers crossed. So I don't know that I have the level of confidence in them to say, yeah, they're the favourites, but I think they've got a lot of components that you look for. They've got great pitching. They've got offensive threats. They feel like the, team of destiny a bit this year with the way Rally's season went, don't they? I think if we're looking for the playoff team of destiny this year, it kind of feels like the Mariners. So I'm going to say that's what I want. And then the obvious answer for who is the actual favourites is the Dodgers, clearly. But I don't know if anybody needs to hear us say that.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Mariners. Not that I think they're going to get to the World Series. They just feel like a team cursed to have their season end in heartbreak. Even if this year they did win the division, which is amazing, and like Mariners fans should be delighted with that. It was such a long wait. They became the butt of the joke for so long, and it's not just that obviously they made it this year, but they earned it. I think they were the best team in that division. I think they are one of the best teams in baseball, and so it is great that they are going to be in the playoffs, and I'm excited to see them play. And I think Cal Raleigh maybe is the player I'm most excited to watch as well, because look, everyone knows how great he's been this year, but I think there is still that slight taste in everyone's mouth of 1 year wonder. When's the magic going to run out? Yeah, he hits bombs, but he doesn't do X, Y, and Z. And I just think, who cares? Even if this is the only year he has that is even close to this level, what an unbelievable season, and how amazing would it be if he can cap it off with just an October leading that team to the World Series. And that whole crowd there, it's just a really fun team to root for. So I'm definitely cheering for the Mariners. Favourites wise, I agree with you. I think it's hard to look beyond the Dodgers, boring, but their lineup's so good. They showed it last night in game 1 against the Reds. Obviously, the rotation. Shohei suddenly looks like he is back to ace form. I mean, we never should have doubted him, but having obviously a healthy pitching Shohei makes a massive difference. Maybe Snell's finally going to pitch more than 6 innings in the playoffs. All this stuff seems to be converging nicely for them. But I think the 2 teams I point out as my favourites would be the Phillies in the NL. I just think it seems like things went wrong for them a little bit this year at certain times, and they just found ways to continue to win games. Nola had a really poor year. Zach Wheeler obviously injured at the end. I don't know what his prognosis is. Is he going to return in the playoffs? I don't know if he is.
No, he's got thoracic outlet, the good kind of thoracic outlet syndrome, but still it's going to knock him out. And they're hoping that he'll be back for next season, but there's no chance he'll be in the playoffs.
No chance. Well then, yeah. So that's obviously a huge loss. They still just seem to pick up pitching in other places. Obviously, Christopher Sanchez has a great year. Luzardo seems to be somewhat revitalised, that they just find ways to put it all together. And that lineup is so legit and it is so battle tested and experienced that I just trust it so much. And getting Duran at closer, like that's a guy who, as I'm saying this, I'm realising he's going to melt down now at some point in a massive high leverage situation. But in theory, a guy that you trust to close out games, which has always been their Achilles heel. So I like them, and I'm excited to see what the Blue Jays can do in October. Like, fair play. They have not been a good team in a long time, and they've come out this year and proven everyone wrong to an extent. And like you say, they've got the superstar in Vlad. They've got a rotation that's really fun. They've got other stars in the lineup that probably don't get the national acclaim that they should. So that, I think, would be a very fun World Series matchup if we can get those two teams together. But yeah, plenty of other teams that I'll be interested in watching and excited to see. Who is your vote for World Series you want to see?
I could go for a Mariners Phillies World Series. Actually, I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I could be on board with that. I definitely think, for never having won it reasons, the Mariners would be great. I think there'd be a lot of people rooting for them to do it, and I think the Phillies feel like they've sort of been here, don't they? The last few years, they've been really close to getting it done, and they've just not quite got over the hump. But this feels like the most open postseason that we've had in the last few. And yeah, the opportunity is definitely there for them, as long as they can sort of hold it together. That pitching does look a lot less intimidating without Wheeler, I think. So it's a real shame that he's not going to be there. But I still think, yeah, they've got that formidable lineup, and you definitely trust Sanchez and Ranger Suarez at the top of that rotation. So I think Phillies Mariners would go over pretty well.
That'd be fun. Yeah. And let's go on to the teams we don't want to see in the World Series. Who we hate watching in October? I mean, the obvious team is the New York Yankees, right? And I don't want to be controversial here. I quite like the Yankees. I think they're fun to watch. Judge is awesome. Max Fried's an ace. Like, I've been impressed with how they've been able to get over some of the issues they've had this year with injuries. Obviously, losing Cole for the whole year before the season had even started, and various players not performing up to standards. I guess Volpe's been the brunt of a lot of jokes, hasn't he? And it feels like they could have very easily gone through a Mets-style collapse and just fallen out of it, but they kept finding ways to win. Some guys got healthy. The lineup looks pretty strong. It's been a great year for friend of the podcast, Toby Bellringer. He looked back to top form. So I don't think the Yankees are the team I would least like to win the World Series. And it's been a while for them, right? So I'm not going to say them. I think we're at that point now where I'm hate watching the Dodgers. I'm sorry, I don't want them winning the World Series. I get it, they're awesome. I love Shohei, I love Betts, I love all these players. Like the whole Kershaw narrative, I get it, that would be so cool. But it's enough. Like, they are the modern day Yankees from the perspective of just being too good all the time, that I want someone else to win the World Series. I want someone else to be in the World Series this year. So look, Dodgers fans, I'm sorry, but you've had a bit too much. I'm openly rooting for your downfall this year. I do not want you to win another World Series. But Darius, who do you least want to win the World Series, and why?
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees is a good shout. In sort of, I like you, I do quite like a lot of the Yankees. I was quite heartened to see Volpe hit a home run last night, have a good game, because I just think he's 23. Like, the amount of abuse he's been getting this season is pretty horrendous. I know it's been a tough year for him, but yeah, he bats eighth in their lineup. Like, don't worry about it, guys. Yeah. The lineup is great. It's a fantastic lineup. Hopefully we get playoff Stanton. I love a bit of playoff Stanton. Always fun to see. So I don't think that I would necessarily object to a Yankees run, but I think I would object to the discourse. I cannot take the discourse, the level of analysis we get, the level of griping from the Yankees fans. It's just painful. And yes, I know it's been since 2009. Then I'll know, terrible. A long time since you haven't won the World Series. So I just think for that reason alone, that is high on the list of like maybe just get them bounced early, and then we don't have to deal with this anymore.
We saw them get to the World Series last year. That was enough, wasn't it? We don't need to actually see them win it.
Yeah, and then we had to hear about their lack of. Well, we've still been hearing about their lack of fundamentals all the way throughout this season after that Game 5 performance. Like that story did not go away. So that's what we've got to look forward to. I'm sure if anybody makes a big error in any spot at any point in this postseason for the Yankees, I don't know that I want the Red Sox much more necessarily. They've had a lot of success in recent years. Probably the discourse will be just as bad if the Red Sox go deep into this postseason. So yeah, they're both probably towards the bottom of the list of teams I'm rooting for. And then I dunked on the Guardians already, I guess. So that one. I know it's been a really long time since they've won it, and I feel kind of mean for saying it, but I don't think I would get a great deal of joy out of watching this caliber of lineup go deep into the postseason. Especially, I mean, can you imagine them against the Mariners rotation? Like, what is the pain going to be of that? Like, there's just going to be nothing.
And they'd still find a way to win 1-0.
They probably that would be the thing though, just to have like 3 4 1-0 victories. Yeah, dreadful. I guess they don't need 3 in the DS, but yeah, I'm not sure I could bring myself to watch a series of Guardians 1-0 victories on an error and a stolen base and a sac fly or something. Not what I'm looking for from entertainment as a general concept. I guess this is not why I come to watch baseball. So yeah, they're my bottom 3.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the Guardians making the World Series. As much as I feel like I'm now destined to have had the coldest take ever, I don't see them putting that run together. Although I guess after last year's World Series being, the major network's dream, we're probably due for a Guardians Brewers World Series to help even it all out. So maybe we should bear that in mind. But yeah, I agree. I would not be too excited about seeing them. Make.
I mean, after the early home run today, they still only have 2 hits, and it's now the bottom of the 8th. So that tells you how that's going.
Miserable. Well, I think that's pretty much covered. We've covered most teams off at this point. I guess let's finish with maybe, is there a player who you will be keeping an eye on or excited to see how they perform under the bright October?
Are you there?
Oh, did you lose me?
I did lose you, yeah. Your thing just turned off altogether. Right?
Oh, did it? What was
Yeah, your camera went off and then it just did like our logo or something for a bit and then you came back.
New recording track created, there it is. I wonder what caused that. Where did I get to? Should I just start again?
You'd almost finished asking me if there was a player I was interested in,
okay.
But I don't know if it quite caught all of it, so I guess ask it again just in case.
I'll ask it again just in case. So yeah, before we wrap, maybe we can just have a quick look at, rather than teams, but a player that you are excited to see in this year's postseason. Whether it be one of those big stars like Cal Raleigh, who I mentioned, or whether it be more of an under the radar guy who you're just excited to see play in October baseball, who's got your attention.
I got a couple of names. One more of a veteran, one more of a young guy. George Springer, I think we just have to mention the season that George Springer has had. Probably his best offensive season at a point in his career when I think a lot of people, I certainly had written him off as, he's on the downswing now. We're not going to see peak George Springer back. And, he had 166 WRC plus this season, hit 309. 32 homers, like really, really good. Big reason why the Blue Jays won the division this year is George Springer making that bounce back. And he's always been a guy, when the Astros have been making all those runs, he was always there, being the hype guy in the dugout, being excited. He's a fun guy, if you've got one of those classic postseason games, he's getting hyped up. He's a fun player to watch. So great to see him back. Great that he had such a season. And I'm hoping that we get some more classic Springer playoff moments. And then on the other side, on the pitching side, I'm going to say Brian Wu, because I think, he was sort of seen as 3rd, maybe 4th on that Mariners pitching depth chart, on that pecking order. And Logan Gilbert had some injury struggles and didn't quite pitch up to his previous levels, and George Kirby didn't have his best year, and Brian Roode just stepped up and was really the rock in that staff. Pitched unbelievably well this season, really cemented himself as an ace. And I think it's always great when we get these players that maybe people aren't necessarily paying attention to if they're not on their own teams until it gets to the playoffs. So I'm really hoping that Wu kind of shows out on the national stage and people get to recognise what an outstanding pitcher he is, because he had a really excellent season.
Two good picks, yeah. Wu, I've always thought is really fun to watch pitch. I know he went through issues with Darius, like shoulder soreness and stuff at one point, but yeah, to see the way he's blossomed this year has been fun. Just a really, really exciting guy to watch. Who finally, I guess, is getting his flowers, like you say, buried in his rotation for a long time, but was always really good and probably getting those plaudits. I think my obvious pick would be Kyle Schwarber. It's just something about the way that man hits home runs and something about the way he does it in October particularly that is just really fun. I think the playoffs are better when Kyle Schwarber's in them, and fortunately he has been a lot recently, partly off his own back because he's just a very good player. But yeah, been really excited to see him and that whole Phillies lineup really, but especially Schwarber back out there in October. And then the other pick, I think it has to be one of these, starting pitchers who have got the ability to turn the games. We talked about Scooble already, but let's mention Garrett Crochet. I mean, he was outstanding in Game 1 for the Red Sox. Certainly not an under the radar pick, but he, has all the makings of a kind of guy who can just take over a game in a postseason and be just dominant and carry that team. And I think that is super important in October, to have a guy you can rely on, even if it isn't, the Cy Young winner. I think it's important to have that kind of guy. But yeah, beg your pardon, Crochet is a Cy Young winner, or Cy Young contender at least. And I think he could take that team a long way. So yeah, he is brilliant in Game 1. And I think he'll be a big part of the Red Sox making a run if they do. So very excited to see him in action.
That was a real old school. I think they let him go 117 pitches as well. I feel
like
I was watching a game from 10 years ago. It's like, you do not see this number anymore, ever. You never see anybody get 117. But he was just dealing, and yeah, Cora was like, let the man roll. Fair play to him. So great to see. I will just note that since we ragged on the Guardians a bit more, they have now scored 2 runs. So obviously they're going to make the World Series.
Are they wasting all of their runs in one game though? 3. My goodness.
3.
Well, there you go. Well, maybe that series is going to a decider then, which is exciting. We will see. I mean, on starting pitchers, obviously, it was a banner night for them in that first night. Is there, do you think, a trend towards pitchers or managers, trusting their aces a bit more and letting them throw maybe not 120 pitches, but certainly go deeper into games and let the aces eat? Or is it just a matter of, look, we saw a few of the best starting pitchers in the game last night go deep, but the general trend is still going to be, give me 4 or 5 innings and I'm turning it over to the pen?
Yeah, I think maybe there's a little bit more on the, if you have got one of those no doubt high-end aces, we will let you roll. But we've seen some exceptionally quick hooks so far already. I mean, Mize in this Tigers game, I think he walked a guy to start the 4th, and AJ Hinch was out there like, you're done, mate. Like, that was it. So the kind of thing you would not see in the regular season. I think he'd thrown 60-odd pitches at that point. So it definitely wasn't a pitch count thing. It was just this is a playoff game and I'm not messing around. I think that kind of thing is... You've
walked a Guardians hitter, you're done.
Yeah, that's it. We can't tolerate this kind of thing. So I think we'll still continue to see that with the guys lower down the pecking order in the rotations. I think, yes, your Scoobles, your Crochets, your Woos, then we'll see those guys allowed to go a bit deeper. I think especially if you've got them like lined up that first game of the series, you don't necessarily want to say, yeah, I want to get 5 innings out of the bullpen already. You don't know how the series is going to go. That can have an effect, obviously. If you're going to get through a series, you're going to need that bullpen probably multiple times. And to just sort of cut somebody out of the game, especially when they're pitching the ways that Scooble and Crochet were in those game 1s. I think, if they're rolling, then I think we're going to see managers just say, I'm going to keep letting them roll. But I think we're still going to see 40, 50, 60 pitch starts from a lot of the guys pitching in these playoffs, and maybe even, we'll probably, there's going to be, how long till we get a Dave Roberts bullpen complaint? I mean, it's coming, isn't it? They're gonna yank one of those Dodgers starters early, and they get somebody who relieves them is going to give up runs. That's going to be very interesting storyline to watch how the Dodgers bullpen plays out, because they do not have anybody that Dave Roberts trusts right now.
It will be interesting. I mean, I do, not to sound like one of those old heads, but I do miss the days of pitchers being given longer leashes, and I think it's great that even if it is just a few guys, they are being given the chance to go deep in games and put the game on their back. But there's also, like you say, that there's the strategy piece of, if you want to burn your bullpen arms early in a series, you can, but that may have knock-on effects. And I do feel like we saw a little bit of that last year, where teams that have been so heavily reliant on bullpen games and on relievers going out there 2-3 days in a row or 4 or 5 times in a series were starting to flag towards the end of October. So maybe we will see a slight shift the other way, especially when it comes to those top end guys. And yeah, the bullpen chat. I mean, it wouldn't be a postseason without the, what was he thinking when a previously excellent reliever just happens to give up a home run or a series of unfortunate hits. But that's what we do it for, is the discourse.
Is Clayton Kershaw going to be out there for the save in Game 7 of the World Series? I guess that's what I'm asking. Is that the thing we most want to see?
For the narrative.
Cool. For the narrative. It'd be cool until he blew it, and then it'd be like, oh no, now his career's over and he's one more blemish on the postseason legacy.
Just to blow it in October one more time. Clayton Kershaw, the floor is yours.
One more for the road. I wish I hadn't put that out there into the world now, but I have, so there it is.
You hate to see it. The content would be tremendous.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
Right, let's leave it there. We've done now who we do want to see in the World Series, who we don't want to see in the World Series. Let's end with your prediction. Who is going to be in the World Series if you have to choose now?
Give me the Mariners. Give me the Mariners and the Dodgers, because it's the Dodgers. But Mariners are my team of destiny this year. I believe if Cal Raleigh can hit 60 home runs, anything can happen.
God, I love that. I mean, not the Dodgers bit, but I love the Mariners bit. Give me the Yankees and the Phillies. Give me an 2009 World Series rematch. But I really do hope the Mariners at least go on a good run here. That would be so much fun. Right, well, we'll be back, I've no doubt, between now and the World Series to talk more about baseball that's happening. I'm actually going to be in Boston in a couple of weeks' time. So if the Red Sox could extend their run until I get there, that would be fun for me on a very personal level, even though I'm not particularly fussed about seeing them win the World Series. But
so
yes,
no pressure on Garrett Crochet, but he needs to get the job done.
Kind of has to win a couple of series here, yeah. But yeah, we will be back to discuss. I think we're going to try and get the rarely cited Gav on to talk about his travails in Rotterdam. We didn't do a very good job mentioning it at the top of the podcast, but he was out there to watch Team GB in the European Championships. Unfortunately, Team GB did get knocked out in the quarterfinals by Spain in the Euros that were eventually won by the Netherlands, who did have a lot of extremely good Major League talent on their roster, so not a massive shock. But I believe Gav had a wonderful time out there. I think there was a lot of very good baseball played by GB and others. So I look forward to hearing his recap of the tournament once we're able to get him back on the show. And yeah, we'll do some more playoff chat, hopefully with a few more of us available in very due course. That's all from me. Thanks, Darius, for joining me and talking some baseball. And yeah, enjoy it wherever you're watching, and let's see if the Guardians can score more than 3 runs again. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.